everybody. Welcome to Damn's Given, a podcast this week about the rumored demise of the software business, dispelling some AI mythology, and the incredibly important geometry of circles versus lines. Nick Richtsmeier, your host. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you my interview with Amy Carrillo Cotten, just a brilliant transformation specialist, engineer, software guru, that I've had the pleasure of working with, that really helped us break down this question of what's really going on with AI and software, and is SaaS dead, and all of these kinds of questions. That has really, I think, significant implications for both, obviously, that industry, but really every industry and every leader that's facing this sort of quote unquote unprecedented era of change. And so at one level, we're really talking about the specifics of transformation in the software space. But at another level, I think we're really fundamentally talking about how to deal with hype, how to deal with systemic change, and what that means in any organization. Before we get to that, just a little bit of our usual housekeeping. Just a reminder that all episodes are available on pretty much every podcatcher you can find. If you want a little bit deeper dive, recommend you get everything through the newsletter at damnsgiven.com. We have alternating weeks, so you get podcast episodes and then you get newsletter episodes or newsletters in between. Lots of good content there. Some extra bonus for signing up there. You get the super show notes, which gets some deeper dives into some of what I'm thinking coming out of the episode. If you're not watching us on YouTube, that's also a good spot to swing by. On our YouTube channel, you get access to training videos and other kind of topic-specific things related to my broader work in trust-made growth. This last week, prior to the recording of this episode, just dropped a brief video on the question of trust-made and pricing. A lot of folks having questions about pricing right now and how to think about it in a trust-building way, and why founders really tend to struggle with this, and would love to have you take a look at that. And then, of course, like, subscribe, follow, all the things wherever you are, and join the conversation. So I do read the comments on YouTube and on the podcasting channels. You can send me emails at podcastsingular@culturecraft.com. So joining on the conversation. And if you want to be on the conversation all the time, you can join the community over at the Guild at trustmadegrowth.com. So lots of places to find, etc. This week, we get to jump right in with the news. One of the nice things about our new publishing schedule is get to talk a little bit about things that are more time sensitive at the beginning. And so glad I waited 24 hours or so to record this, because we are now officially two big news items. One is Disney and the Sora OpenAI meltdown that happened this week. And of course, the big ruling coming out of New Mexico that Meta and YouTube are liable for targeting children with addictive behavior. Not going to go deep into the Meta and YouTube thing, only to say that this kind of social media as a sort of destructive force for teenagers is, I think we're only at the front end of this. Like, I think this is just going to get hotter and hotter and hotter. And what I want our community to really notice is that our society, Western society, America specifically, is doing what it often does, which is it doesn't know how to litigate harm at a broad system scale, because we get into moral relativism and sort of the deeply Americanized view that individual people should get to do whatever they want. So we have a really difficult time talking about harm at a system scale. So the way that we solve for that is we zoom in on a place where we feel okay protecting each other and taking care of each other. And in this case, it's teenagers, right? And it's often with young people. So the addictive harm of social media goes far beyond people with just teenagers who have an unfinished prefrontal cortex. The harm of social media is systemic and affects you and me all the time, right? We talked about it last episode about LinkedIn and the addictive behavior and Jacob's experience with that, all our experience with that. Culturally, we're going to primarily address that through the lens of teens. I want us to keep watching this space and paying attention to it, because it really will start to examine the public sentiment around these platforms and whether they are a force for good or a force for harm by and large, right? There's good and bad examples. People have had good experiences on social media, bad experiences, but this is about the system, and is the system a force for good or a force for harm? And we're starting to see some of the, some of the language around this and the ideas around this shift. And I think that's really important because of how then for how businesses think about social media, how we individually think about it, and kind of where things go from here, remains to be seen. But as of today, Meta and YouTube are liable for harming children for a very small amount of money relative to their annual revenue. But this could be an open gate for other things, will be continue to be litigated in the courts. More importantly, I think, or more, maybe not more importantly, but more at a more grand scale, is OpenAI suddenly, without even letting Disney know in advance, letting anybody know in advance, pulls the plug on Sora, their AI video app. The Sora AI video app, along with the one on X and other places, have been a massive scale tool for IP theft, for misusing, for deepfakes, for all kinds of harm-inducing things, for unsolicited pornography, like all kinds of things have been sort of a harm engine coming out of those AI production apps. And OpenAI is, not in good shape. And so they're trying to figure out what their core business is. They mentioned in a press release that we're getting back to our core business. I don't think anyone really knows what the OpenAI core business is, but we know what it's not. It's not Sora. Disney walks away with a lot of egg on their face. They were early to say, hey, if generative AI video is the future and it's going to eat into our business, then we're going to get on the train early. And now that train imploded underneath them, which is an interesting phenomenon for new CEO Josh D'Amaro. All our thoughts and prayers to Josh D'Amaro and that issue. But for our listening audience, the issue here is, again, kind of where does this go? There's a lot of moving sands here, and the impression that we were given from the media, from the AI leaders, from certainly LinkedIn gurus, et cetera, is that this AI thing was an up and to the right situation, and it was fast moving, and you better get on, right? Otherwise, you're going to be left behind. This sort of the myth of inevitability, and I've written at length about the myth of inevitability and the harm it does to businesses to buy into the idea that something's inevitable instead of using your own judgment about what's the right thing for your particular case and your particular situation. Inevitability is a PR and a marketing motion. It's not a description of reality. And certainly lots of people are doing free PR for the AI companies. You just go on LinkedIn and that's what they're doing. But we've seen this before. We had the entire marketing industry doing free PR and free sales for MarTech for over a decade. The MarTech industry would not have exploded the way it did if firms like HubSpot and others had not co-opted in-house marketers and marketing agencies to basically sell their product without compensation. So this idea of free PR for the fastest moving, newest tech is not new, but it is happening at a really grand scale in a way that we haven't seen before. So when it backtracks, when we go, oh, well, just kidding, this thing's actually not going to happen, we want to, raise our little antennas and go, what the heck's happening here? And the short answer is we don't know, right? We don't really know what's happening over at OpenAI, but we know that this is a key lesson in the mistake that is repeatedly made. And that is the idea that things are always going to go up and to the right, and that things are going to move in a line. Well, nothing moves in a line. Absolutely nothing in the move in a line. We can retrograde reality and go, well, if we bump out all of the extremes and do this, and we pick the right start date, and we pick the right end date, we can average it out into something that approximates a line. But nothing moves in a line. If we really had the view of how things move in reality, which is hard to replicate on a chart, things move circularly in kind of that golden ratio swirling out from the center with a lot of chaos in between. And the more systemic change is involved, and the more there is media noise involved, the more volatility there is. And so we're at ultimately high levels of cultural volatility, a term coined by Avante Daniels. All credit to him. We'll link to him and his work in the show notes. But with this level of cultural volatility, we definitely are not getting lines. We're getting what we always get, which is circles. Because entities and systems, if they're healthy and they breathe, they work in circles. They work in cycles like nature. The less healthy something is, the more it becomes inorganic. The inorganic things try to move through in a line, and what they become is fragile. So inorganic doesn't move us towards security, it moves us to fragility. And that fragility means that you have to have a very, very, very specific set of settings for it to do its job, and it can't do much but one thing. Think about like a bridge. A bridge is incredibly inorganic, right? It doesn't grow, it doesn't shift, we don't really want it to move. And we have to do an enormous amount of effort, an enormous amount of money, an enormous amount of intelligence and tooling just to get it to stay put, just to create stasis. And then once we have that stasis, it really only does one thing. It lets people cross it, right? It doesn't have the agility to become something else. Well, organizations, ventures, nonprofits, institutions, most of them need to have some level of agility. And when we're in a massive time of change, that agility is even more important. And so organizations benefit by being highly organic, highly cyclical, riding that wave in and out, learning to breathe through the rise and fall of change. That's part of how you become a trust-made entity, is by moving through that change in an organic way. Well, one of the things that we're seeing, and this really gets to our topic today, is that the SaaS business, the software business, is the flag has been raised. How organic is it? How responsive to change is it? How rigid is it? And the SaaS business has so many elements of the chaos that we're talking about. A lot of media, a lot of attention, a lot of PR on the front end of change. And when you have an industry like that, it's very disruptible. You know, a lot of credit has been given to software to be doing disruption, but in fact, the software in many ways is now the recipient of the disruption that it created, and raises tons of questions. Inside a venture, then a leader has to ask some fundamental questions, which is, in the midst of massive change, in the midst of systemic upheaval, in the midst of media noise, have I created the conditions for change, or am I absorbing the conditions for chaos? Have I created the conditions for change, which requires me putting some boundaries up of what's happening out there? So if I don't put the boundaries up for what's happening out there, all of that chaos seeps in. And what we're being incentivized and encouraged to do is, no, let all of it in. Let all the AI in. Be an early adopter. Test everything. Bring it all in, right? But the more we do that, the more we bring in the chaos, right? So we have to be selective about how we think about innovation in an individual institution, as an individual group, an individual leader. And in being selective, then we have to choose what to bring in to create the conditions for change. An expert on this is my friend Amy. And you're going to love Amy. She's so brilliant. She's so thoughtful as to the layers of how a system works. She really understands root cause. She understands leaders' role in addressing and thinking about root cause. And she specifically understands this in the realm of software. So you run an off software org, whether you're, again, a SaaS business, or if you've got a big software org inside an institution like a bank or something else, I really think you should zoom in on Amy's work. We're going to have, of course, I'll have all her contact info that she'll allow us to put out into the world, and her LinkedIn and all of that in the show notes, so you can find her, because Amy's really special. And so with that, I won't delay us any further. Forward with Amy. So Amy, I am so excited to be here with you. For those of you who are listening to the pod today, I get to hang out with Amy in non-pod time, and I'm so excited to introduce her to all of you on a topic that I surprisingly is prescient, but we just don't hear a lot of meaty things about. Maybe if you're reading the right Substacks or something, there's some meaty stuff in there somewhere. But really the question is how to think about engineering as a profession, software engineering, and the business of making software in the age of AI. And what are the real issues, right? If supposedly Claude Code could go and write every piece of code that ever needed to be written, which if you follow some people, that is exactly what's happening. Or, oh, it's all trash and it just creates a bunch of trash code and all of this is fake and it's just hype, right? We bounce around these extremes. And that's true of a lot of the topics we cover here on Damn Given. And I always want to bring you people who have really smart things to say, but also care deeply about the topic. So I want to start there. Amy, tell me about why we should care about engineering in the age of AI.
There's this talk track that's going around about how engineers are now expendable and replaceable, that AI is going to replace them. And that's really insulting if you were an engineer to hear that. It's also not true yet. There's ways in which it can be true, which is why that narrative gains some traction. But I mean, engineers are having a really big identity crisis when it comes to AI because, again, their world gets affected differently from the folks who are just using AI in sales or using AI in marketing. Those professions experience a lot of change, but this is down to the identity of what is software engineering. Well, what is my role as an engineer has been fundamentally questioned by AI.
If we pulled some of those people together and got them sauced up on some tequila or put a Nerf gun to their head, like what's the real guts of what people are feeling, experiencing? What's the human experience of being in that space beyond just, again, the online pontificating?
Yeah, it's a really weird experience because every engineering leader I talk to is, on the one hand, super excited about AI and wants to experiment and sees the potential. And on the other hand, are victims of this intense pressure. They are pressurized in terms of reducing costs, partially because of AI, partially because of some other economic factors. They're pressurized to go faster and do more and 10x and all the things. And that's just, it makes it hard for them to even talk about AI in a sane way because as soon as they say AI, somebody has jumped to conclusion that they're going to fire all their engineers and Claude Code's going to do everything. So I think it's this really weird experience because, again, individually, if you talk to them, they're like, yeah, we've done some experiments and this is really cool, or I've played with it on my own. But in the context of their work, it's really pressurizing and very fraught, really.
Yeah, I mean, so let's get into the meat of that. I'll ask you a question I asked you the other day, and you can feel free to say it the same or differently. Is this legitimately an existential issue? You hear a lot of talk about this is existential for software engineering. In your view, is this existential? This episode of Damns Given is brought to you by The Guild from TrustMade Growth. TrustMade Growth is the foundation for remaking our ventures and our communities into human-centered form, recovering the flow of resources and growth away from monopolies and into the hands of the majority. The Guild is a free community, what we call a counterculture of commerce, where we support, encourage, and resource free-thinking leaders to claim their agency, their intellectual capacity, and their ability to make opportunity. If you have a deep sense that the status quo of the economy that's been built needs a reset, and want to lean into doing the work to hone your ability to contribute with peers and mentors, then the Guild from TrustMade Growth is for you. Discover it now at trustmadegrowth.com. You hear a lot of talk about this is existential for software engineering. In your view, is this existential?
The answer is kind of. So for some engineers who understood engineering differently, this will be existential. And what I mean by that is, way back in the day, the engineer's job was to take a problem and talk to the machine so that the machine would solve the problem, right? And that machine happened to be computers and whatever guys it was. And unfortunately, over time, something got lost in translation and it became, okay, my job is just to write code. Like, my job is just to write code. I don't need to care about solving the problem. That's product's function. I have to worry about writing code. And so for those for whom engineering is about writing beautiful code, yeah, this is existential because Claude, even though it doesn't write beautiful code yet, writes a lot of code and is writing more beautiful code over time. And so, yeah. But for those who understood the assignment that this is about solving problems, I mean, AI is just another tool in their arsenal, and it really does change how they do it, but it doesn't change the fundamental role of as an engineer, as a problem solver, using technology to solve problems.
Yeah, I want to dig in here because, right, this is where most quote unquote societal and cultural and economic disruption happens. Is it appears to be a thing. It appears to be, oh my gosh, this thing landed from space and it's changed everything. And what's really happening is there's been this slow degradation of fundamentals in some sort of a arena, and then the disruptive thing comes in and exposes that degradation of fundamentals, right? So, to use your language, right, there's this losing sight of understanding the assignment, and the assignment being fundamental to solve problems. I'll ask you a question that deserves a doctoral thesis. How exactly did software, the business of software, lose sight of problem solving as a core function?
So it became really important that you spend a lot more time and energy learning how to be a technologist and learning technology. And unfortunately, that came at the expense of something else. So it was less important to learn the business. It was more important to know the technology. AI has totally reshuffled that, right? Like AI, especially when you don't know the language or the code base, like AI is great at just like taking away that learning curve, really. So for those people who really went all in, and again, this isn't just people, this was whole educational systems where like, no, technology is really tricky now. It's not like it used to be. So let's spend a lot of time on that. And like people will just figure out the business stuff on their own, spoiler, alert, they won't. So like that was a big sort of fork in the road. I think then what we saw is these other functions getting added back in on top to take that away from the engineers. So there was kind of a period of time when engineers were such a black box and that technology was so complex and nobody understood it, that it was like they were sort of like monks casting spells in the corner, like some mystical wizards. And it was just like this very much like, oh, let's not disturb the engineers, and let's create these functions. Like first it was, business analysis or business analysts, and then it was product owners, and then it was product management. And again, I have love for all of those professions in the right way at the right time, but that also took the responsibility away from engineers of understanding the fundamental problems of the business. And so like those were two sort of big forks in the road that sort of took us away from the purpose of what is engineering for.
Yeah, we're seeing this across industries because we have a lot of listeners who listen from a lot of different spaces, and we're seeing this. There's certainly a marketing version of that story, right? There's certainly a sales version of that story. There's these fundamental ways where the massive amount of acceleration in technological complexity that we've been doing for the last 10 or 15 years created this sort of divorce between the human side of what needs to be done and the technical side of what needs to be done. And I am just transparently very dubious of the like, well, AI is going to bring the human element back and all this like kitschy, Hello Kitty BS you read kind of stuff, because I don't necessarily think that's true. I don't think there's some magical like, oh, we're going to embrace humanity again because of AI. But it is interesting to me that the way you framed it, which is because AI takes a thing that used to seem really, really hard and cumbersome and makes it at least appear easier, there's this space to pivot and go, well, what if we did put some attention back to this other thing? And I think we're seeing this in marketing. We're seeing this in sales. We're seeing this in other places. We're seeing this in content, right? We spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to send 6,000 emails a day. And now a bot can do 6,000 emails and landing pages and all that, can do that in its sleep. So what might we think about if we weren't thinking about sending 6,000 emails a day? So the people that you're talking to that are having the aha moments in a positive way and are going, oh, I get to get back to a different kind of work. What are they pivoting back to?
I think it
Or
depends.
forward to?
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on where they came from and what they're into. I see some people doing really cool things where they've got like fleets of agents doing some of I call the grunt work, just the mechanics of coding and deploying and testing and so forth. And so they're able to zoom out and think more about the architecture, to think more how it fits together, to think more about how this could be sort of like a self-healing and resilient systems, because those type of promises in technology have been around for a long time. And candidly, like most organizations haven't reached them. And so now they're able to be like, well, now that I have more time, essentially, like let's go for some of those promises that were previously unattainable for most. So there's like a flavor of folks doing that. And there's another flavor of folks who are just like really getting back to the basics, who are like, what is the problem? Like let's see how we can get back to the original problem. Let's talk to users more. Let's work on sort of using the tools we have to work with users differently. So I've also met a kind of a cadre of engineers who are using the AI tools. Now, again, they've removed some of the toil, so now they have more time, and then they're using AI in this new, like, okay, how do we elicit the problem? How do we ask the right questions? How do we solicit the edge cases? How do we really deeply understand the user problem? Previously that was done by proxies or other people and such. Like using their energy for that has been just really cool to watch.
But let me zoom in on that for a second too, because like that would be awesome, right? That if that became the norm, right, is that because what we're experiencing contextually is this rising cynicism about software, right? This is all happening sequentially to The business environment is like, do we really need one more app? And everybody's trying to lower their, per seat costs. Like all of the things on the buy side of software has contracted. We have some contracting issues on the capital side, where capital is like, hey, money isn't free anymore. Interest rates are higher, so we have higher expectations of what we're buying into. Those are contextual issues, and in the middle, there's pressure, right? But cynically, like, is the pressure really to have the engineering firms be more customer and problem focused, or is the pressure to do more with less?
I mean, most places it's to do more with less. I mean, there's a lot of urban legends and myths around 10x engineers, and just the possibilities of AI even is kind of a legend. And so, yeah, the pressure is not necessarily focused in the right way. It's like, okay, we're gonna fire. Just today, Pinterest announced they're laying off, 675 engineers because AI. And I have to question that because, again, working in the field, a lot of the times that's actually just it's a red herring. It's not actually about AI, it's about something else. So a lot of the times, yeah, the pressure is not in the right place. It's do more with less. It's kind of just automate this away, sort of, yeah. It's not coming from a good place a lot of the time, but there is a hidden moment there. There's a hidden opportunity for an engineering leader to be like, whoa, I don't have to be a victim of my circumstances. I don't have to be a victim of this pressure. It's real. I can't make it go away, but I can, again, use it to refocus on what's going to really drive results, because living scared is not going to help anyone.
If I'm a executive in a B2B environment, I've got a whole bevy of software that I buy, right, of different styles and use cases. Best case scenario, what should I expect from my software providers through this era? Like, what do I want from them? What do I want from the people I'm buying technology from that I
Yeah.
wasn't getting before?
Well, there will be a few who really, again, understand the assignment and who start doing more. I guess folks are calling it forward deployed engineers, but it's really kind of like a blend of consulting and customer success. Call it whatever you need to sleep at night. Actually deploying people to make sure that you're getting the value that you need out of your software. And that can look like different things depending on what the software is. Those folks, again, who are probably using AI to offload some costs and capacity to allow them to hire people to do that, and again have sort of refocused on that idea, those are the folks with whom you're going to be able to forge a partnership like you've never had before. And you should expect that. You should push your vendors to give you that. And then there'll be, well, the messy middle. The majority of folks will do what everyone is doing, and they're going to be putting AI in everything just because it sounds cool. Remember chat bots, right? Like when everybody had a chatbot for everything and it was just annoying, very annoying. It's like that with AI. It is already, if you haven't noticed, and there will be more of that. Like there will be just like useless, needless, ridiculous AI use cases. So like you should expect that, but you shouldn't be with that. You should just
As an average everyday user, I was complaining to somebody this morning. I'm like, my calendar is a disaster because I have four different AIs grabbing every sign that I potentially have a meeting. So every meeting's on my calendar four times. Like I just, it's chaos, right? So we're in a little bit of that chaotic period. So I love this idea that one of the things or a big thing that I should notice in this change from a good firm is a more forward deployment of sort of a human interface to the software of let's work together to make this successful for you. Are there any other things that I should recognize in this kind of transition of like, hey, my vendor really has got their head screwed on straight?
vendors who are asking, even if they don't have forward deployed engineers and they're not like really yet able to take that step, because that's not easy and that requires a lot of internal alignment. It requires things that a lot of organizations don't have. Just the fact that they're not just showing you like, hey, here's our cool new AI thing, but saying like, what do you need now? I know companies do that sort of, but like there should be more of that, because now there is the capacity and the ability to point different tools at customer problems. So there should be that. And what the other thing that AI can help and people should be taking advantage of is they should be able to reflect back to you more valuable metrics about how you're using things. And yeah, there should be more capacity for doing things like instrumentation. And so that should end up having a dividend for you. Like you should be able to now know more, which is usually exciting because you usually find things out in the data. So that's stuff you should see. I think if that's mostly coming online a little bit with some organizations as we speak, I mean, we should see more of that. We should see more data being reflected back. And of course, they'll be good and bad, right? Some people will just like barf out the data, won't be very helpful. Some people will do a good job of like taking that, curating that, turning that into insights and giving that back to you. And that'll be exciting. Because again, that type of stuff used to be hard and cumbersome and now is less so.
So you mean something a little bit more advanced than just that every company now has a Spotify Wrapped at the end of the season of how I use their software? A little bit better data than that is what we're looking for.
Hopefully. Yeah. And AI, of course, messed up Spotify Wrapped for a bunch of people, including my own. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about it from the employee point of view, because one of the things that we continually bump on in this conversation, on this podcast, with the people I deal with in real life and you deal with in real life, is just the employment environment. And so I'm Joe Engineer, and I'm maybe I'm gainfully employed, maybe I'm not, maybe I'm in transition, whatever. I'm among the 16,000 layoffs at Amazon today. What's my next best action? If I'm going to kind of prepare myself to move into the next era of my career, what's my next best action? What should I be focusing on?
Man, like I'm not going to try to get all life coach here, but it's just remember that you have the fundamental critical thinking and problem solving skills. You have them. And going and chasing after the next new AI course or the next new AI technology may be the right thing to do in some very narrow sectors of the industry. But in general, it's coming back to your fundamental skills, eliciting edge cases, understanding why this might work or won't work, and the options available to you, and then the ramifications of those options. Those are the skills that you need to remember you have and freshen those up. Of course, yes, you got to introduce a bunch of new tools to your tool belt, but engineers have been doing that tinkering for decades. Like that's kind of part of the gig, right? There's like you got to learn new languages and new techniques. This is like that. Like this is not that different from that. So it's more about remembering that these tools are available in service of what you already know.
It's interesting though, right? Because that is a little bit of a musculature shift. Like at one point, one level, you're saying, hey, this is who you've always been. Just trust that and sort of be in the pocket, which is, I'm here for you, being the life coach. I think that you'd be excellent. And at the same time, it is slightly different in the sense that, like, I mean, again, I'll speak out of turn as if I know what I'm talking about. Like, if I was a coder engineer and I was at that pivot point where I had to move from, C++ to Python, right? Because to really be competitive, I had to be conversant in Python. If we're using the umbrella of expanding my toolkit at that point in my career required a ton of energy and attention, right? I think part of the mythology around AI that I find fascinating is there's all this like, well, you got to learn it. You got to go learn it or be left. And I'm like, and maybe you can help dispel this. Like, learn what? Right.
Again, I mean, there's like a narrow slice of people who need to know things about like models and very specific. Like, again, if you work in ML on ML models, which is a very small portion of the software industry, but yes, by all means, first of all, you're already learning it because everybody did that like 5 years ago in that particular very small niche area. And second of all, like, you don't need me to tell you that. Everybody else, as far as like, what does it mean to learn AI? A lot of it, I've heard engineers use different word for it. It's like dealing with, they call it like the genie or the assistant, like dealing with this other entity this technology that is a little bit, doesn't follow instructions well, like needs a lot of coaching and learning how to use that effectively, learning how to create agents, create fleets of agents. Like those are skills, learning how to prompt effectively, give it rules, sort of, you know, learning when to check it, when to engage, those are all skills. So like that is learning AI. But as far as like, oh, I'm going to like go learn models and stuff like I mean, again, if you're already in that field, you should do that. But everybody else, no, like don't go do that.
Right. I mean, I think that's part of what's so fascinating about this is we spent, all these years on STEM and everything else. And because skill improvement was this massive lift, right? Technical skill improvement was this massive lift. And I don't want to imply that being good at this today isn't a massive lift. It's just different.
It's just different. I mean, you can know enough to be dangerous now with like next to no time. I mean, I don't know Python very well, and I know enough now to be dangerous, and it took me not very much time. Like it takes me hours, right? It just took me hours to know enough to be dangerous, whereas before that would have been weeks or months. And so like it does there is something about skill acquisition that is amazing. And I think the thing you said in there, like for those who already know these skills, like if you already know Python and are an expert, or if you already know Clojure or whatever language, you're going to be able to understand just like higher order architecture, sort of the consequences of what it is. Like I do stupid stuff and I don't know. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect. Like I'm still in the I don't know that I don't know kind of state. Right? And so AI doesn't take that away. AI is very smart, but it's not probably as smart as you are. So that's okay. You still have something to bring, and you can use that to test your skills. I regularly talk to very senior folks who are principal engineers at very big companies with names you would recognize, and they tell me, AI thought of some edge cases that I just never thought of. And so there are benefits you can get from AI, but it doesn't take away from your knowledge.
Those folks that, because I know part of what you do and part of why I wanted you on this conversation is because you live this very interesting intersection of technical expertise and the human aspect of this. The work that you do is helping the people like you just described sort of expand their capacity to change and shift, and this really interesting human element. The ones who are doing it well, who are having that sort of human expansion go well, what are they doing? What can we learn from them?
First of all, they're generally really humble and really curious.
Yeah.
So like if you're humble and curious, you're probably going to be fine. Uh, so those are the people who are really they're having fun, right? Because they're curious. They're like, I don't know everything. I know a bunch, but let's find out. This is super interesting. I want to try. And those people are just, I mean, they're finding out new things. They're trying new tools, trying them with other people. I really want to stress that the people who are doing this really well are in some kind of community or conversation with somebody about it, because you can get better at AI with just AI, but you get better faster with other people who are going through the same thing. And so the people who are doing it in community, who are humble, who are curious, like they're having a blast. Like there is a lot of exciting innovation that is coming out of this and will continue to come out of this.
It's interesting. Again, as with all professions, there's always a uh, stereotype, and that's mostly inaccurate, right? But is embedded in something, right? And so you have kind of the coder stereotype is like the guy with his hoodie down and he's in the dark and he's by himself and it's the middle of the night and he's pounding out code and whatever. And obviously, to a great extent, that is mythological. But it's interesting to me how many of these capacities that you're describing fly in the face of that, right? And so for many of our people on this call, their kind of primary view of a coder, if they don't know one in their personal life, is like Mark Zuckerberg writing Facebook in the social network, and you're calling for this really humanist view of engineering. How is that being received out in the world?
I mean, it depends a lot on the person and what they were taught about what they are supposed to do. For those who were taught we're supposed to have perfect code and their role is coding and they're supposed to be just like, I learned this, I have kids. I learned this when I have kids, and I actually experienced this as well as a parent. If somebody tells you you're smart, that's actually really damaging, right? Like, because then you like have to maintain this persona of smart. And we have a lot of engineers out there who were told they were smart, who think of themselves as smart, and so have to maintain this persona of smart. And so with AI coming in, they're suddenly like questioning that, like, oh my God, am I smart? And those who are winning, those who understand, those who are like able to adjust, are those who are like, well, it's not that I'm smart, it's that I'm resilient. Like I can learn. Folks who are like, okay, this is a little scary because like that I slaved over that code, like bled tears over that code for days, and you did it in 30 seconds, right? Like that hurts a little bit as a craftsman. Like that hurts me that you could paint the Mona Lisa in 5 minutes. Like I'm sad, but at the same time, like I'm curious. Like okay, well then, what can you do? What can't you do? And what can I still do better than you? Like I'm resilient and I can learn. And that though that's like the difference, because it does fly in the face of a lot of what a lot of folks are taught. And it has to do all the way back to when they were kids. Like, were they told that they were smart, or were they told that they were resilient?
It's interesting to me if we can slip into sort of metaphysical things here, like it, because what you're describing isn't specific to coders and engineers, right? Is that we have a lot of people in the workforce today, people who, if many those of you who are listening who are like not technologists, you've made it this far in the call, proud of you. I told you it was worth it, because this, I think, is the meat of it. Is because I'll talk to graphic designers, or I'll talk to writers, or I'll talk to even strategy people who do kind of business strategy, and there is this almost resentment of like, why is this thing that I love being so shrunken down or minimized, and no one appreciates the effort. I wrote something on LinkedIn several months ago of the, hey, this should be easier to do people, and the, hey, this is really valuable to do people are never going to agree.
No.
Right? That war is, so what you're describing though is that the skill people, the people who have massive skill, are the ones who are letting go of the white knuckles. Right? They're opening up, and they're saying, hey, I can find my identity as a brilliant person in a different soil.
That's right.
Not in the soil of competency, but I love the word you use, resilience, in the soil of resiliency.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, of all of people listening, how like that applies to almost all of us, right? In this chaotic era that we're in, you may not necessarily feel like your job's on the line, but I don't, there's hardly anybody who's like, is this secure, this whatever it is that we're doing right now, right? And that pivot that you're describing of moving to, I can trust myself, not because I'm smart, but because I'm resilient, like put that on a t-shirt, right? I mean, it applies to a lot of people.
Yeah. I want to also talk to the people who are like, my craft, and are clutching their pearls. Cause like, that's happening a lot in engineering, a lot right now. Or like, Claude Code is garbage. And you're like, yeah, but it still works. Like, there's a lot of interesting tension where the junior engineers are saying, yeah, bro, but it still works. Like, so what's your point? Like, again, because they're definitely, just like in writing and art, there's style. In coding, there's style. And so, and what happening is AI has no style. And some people are very torqued about this, and other people are like, it's not a big deal. And I want to speak to the craftsmen right now, those who care about style. I happen to care about style a lot. I think we're starting to figure out that there are places where style is valued and where it isn't. And that in and of itself is not a good or bad. It's just information. So there will always be a place for craftsmanship. There will. I won't tell you how much I paid for a brass keychain on Etsy, but it was a lot. It was ridiculous. And it's because it's a piece of craftsmanship. Could I have gotten it for, 2 for 99 cents at Home Depot? I'm sure I could have, right? But I wanted something that was done by a crafts person, and I got it, and it is beautiful, and I love it very much. My husband was like, "Why would you spend that much money on it?" I wanted the craftsmanship. And so there's always a place for that. And there are places for that. I think that we're realizing we need to make spaces for that, because sometimes that doesn't match with what we are doing, to support capitalism. It turns out. And so, I just want to say to the craftspeople, like, your craft is not going away, and it's not valuable. It may need to find a different home. So
I'm seeing this everywhere, and I'm so glad you said what you said. Is a lot of us were drawn into the idea that you could somehow, if you're in a certain age bracket, I think I'm probably at the top end, but if you're thinking of a certain age bracket, we all grew up in that sort of like follow your passion and it'll all work out kind of thing, like do what you love, kind of thing. And that's sort of woven into this, right? Is because when that becomes your anchor of professional success, well, I'm doing what I love, and I'm embodying my beautiful talent that I've honed over my craft, right? You get very precious about it.
yeah.
And reasonably so, right? But marketplaces are not precious places.
That's it.
And economics is inherently destructive. Now, sometimes it's big destructive, sometimes it's tiny destructive, but inherently we burn through things and then we go do something else. And that's a macro level economic argument to be had on a different stage. But in the stage of like keeping your well-being in all of this, I think people do have to start to divorce craft and economy a little bit.
A little bit. I will say too, though, that one thing that I've seen is people who are just like fanatics about a thing, a certain coding language, a certain style, a certain type of art, a certain thing. Those people, like the AI can't keep up with them. It just can't, it can't, right? It does not have that profound knowledge. And so, like, if you are bananas about a certain language and coding or a certain style or a certain, like, whatever your thing is, like, it is okay to do a thing just because you love a thing, because there is always a very unique niche for that. And I think we're actually going to see the revival of some unique niches, because AI is a really like decent generalist and a real shitty specialist. I outpace it on a couple of my weird hobbies on the daily. And I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about, AI." Like, and so there is a place for doing something because you love it, doing it deeply, like, and even that being okay within the workplace. But yeah, knowing the difference between where craftsmanship is needed and appreciated versus where it's not needed or appreciated, I think can bring us all a little bit more sort of balance and sort of groundedness.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is we're just in an era, and who knows how long this era is going to last, where there is this logic of like, well, if people would just understand how valuable this thing I do is, that
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, I wish that too. And as a person who's reinvented himself professionally like 13 times, like you just got to keep coming back to the table and realize that this thing that you love about you sometimes gets to inch on to the table and sometimes it's over here, right off screen, and that ebbs and flows as careers evolve.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit meta, but you gotta start asking yourself, at least I had to start asking myself, like, okay, well, what is the value and to whom, right? What is the value? Like, who am I trying to prove that I'm valuable to? Like, I know what I know and don't know a lot of things, but like, okay, like, what can I bring here that's valuable? And why, why am I trying to prove myself so hard? Like, why am I trying so hard? Like, I don't need to do that. Cause I know where I get my value from. And so it's just another call to return, to just figuring out like what you do know.
Well, it gives you that space to then move to curiosity, like you were talking about. Is I can move if I don't need my economic life to validate things about me, then I get to be curious and I get to go, okay, well, what can I bring to this in a way that is meaningful to me? I'm happy to do it every day and someone's going to write me a check for it. And I think what people are finding, what I have found, I think what other people are finding is when you do that, I don't want to minimize anyone who's been like out of a job for a year, so please don't at me or send me messages. I'm not trying to minimize a really horrible experience. But I do think that there is a level of looseness that if you have it, this is all a little bit more manageable, because you do have that space for curiosity.
Yeah, I think I came by some of these realizations when I was laid off. Like, I've been laid off and it is horrible and I don't wish it on anybody. It's really, really dreadful. That was like an opportunity to get curious about, well, okay, so I have to get a job. So like I got to figure out what's valuable in the marketplace, but like also what's valuable to me. Where would I spend my time, my intellectual power, like my money, like what would be valuable to me, and asking that question in a different way. You can have opportunities like that, spaces like that when you're going through something, as disruptive and sort of traumatic as being laid off.
Well, Amy, we're going to finish up here with our closing question that we always do. But before we do that, if people want to learn more from you or if they're inspired by you, how can they find you? What's the best place? Should we dox you and put your home address on the internet? What should we do?
No, I have a LinkedIn. I log in maybe once a week, so don't get mad if I don't answer your message right away. So you can always find me on LinkedIn. It's just you can put my link in there, but it's pretty easy. It's Amy's like dash CC. So you can also do old fashioned email because I love to talk to interesting people doing interesting things. So we can put my email on there. We can talk.
And I will say, I mentioned this in the intro. Amy is a client of mine. I just absolutely love what her firm does. Many part of that is because of Amy and the brilliance that she brings. So if you're listening to this and you are in the engineering space and you're like, God, she makes a lot of sense. I wonder how that could work. You should talk to her. You should just absolutely talk to her. She can help with that. Okay, closing question, and you can take this wherever you want to go. There's no rules, which is in a world where caring about stuff is really, really expensive lately. Like it just because we all get worn down, right? And I am finding that the solution to that is some mix of gratitude and hope. Where are you finding hope these days?
Man, so I find hope from poets. So a lot of the poets, dead and living, are just, you know, they're going beyond things. I find a hope in the arts in general. So like I find a lot of hope in dance, seeing people express things that cannot have words. But I also see hope in lots of more mundane things like, you know, preschool teachers and the Montessori teachers at my kids' school, like trying to help kids just learn how to be okay with themselves and manage their emotions. That gives me hope, right? Because those are the fundamental things we need. Not to get too political, but I have a lot of hope based on the actions of the people of Minnesota, and I have a lot of hope in the resistance that is just coming from a place of love and a place of support and a place of the heart. Like those are things that give me hope. I have hope just in the seasons changing. I look outside and I see the seasons change, and I'm reminded that everything changes all the time. The illusion of everything being the same is just an illusion, and so just watching the things change, the birds and the leaves and the trees is enough for me to be like, "Yep, it's changed. So it's here."
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Amy, thank you so much for being here. This has been awesome. And I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure, my honor. Like, I love talking with you, and it's always inspiring to me, the questions you ask and the perspective you bring to these subjects.
Awesome. Okay. Well, so much gratitude for Amy Carrillo Cotten and everything she brought to that conversation. I just love talking to her. She really always makes me think about something. She is deeply committed to the real work of helping organizations thrive and ventures thrive, particularly in her space in software. And put out a sticker or something, but she's trust made. Like you can trust her, and I'd love that. I'm going to finish as we always do with 3 questions when we have the interview episodes. Number 1 is, how am I carrying this conversation, or is it still landing with me? And then number 2, what do I want leaders to get out of today's conversation? We covered that a little bit in the intro, so I'll be a little bit briefer today. And then third, what does it mean for trust? Number 1, how I'm still carrying this conversation. I have the benefit of, because we share a working relationship, full disclosure, Amy's firm is a client of mine, is I'm still carrying it with a level of deep respect for what it takes for these really robust software organizations to move past a culture of shiny object syndrome. We know that leaders easily get caught up in shiny object syndrome, but really what is today a culture of shiny object syndrome, chasing after fads, chasing after the latest thing. It's not about being anti-AI, as we talked about on the call. It's about what do these things actually do, and how do they provide the right piece of the puzzle for what a particular organization needs. I learned a little bit of this from Amy. Part of how I'm carrying the conversation is I'm carrying it with a lot of empathy. Is the software leaders that I know are under a lot of strain. They're pressurized by boards and capital and the media and in some cases clients to be like, well, what are you doing with AI? What are you doing with this? And we have these, I think, less than reputable leaders who are putting out press releases about, well, we're laying off 4,000 people and it's all because of what AI can do. And there's all kinds of evidence that those sort of like, we fired a bunch of our people because AI solves all our problems, that most of those, again, you can do the Googling and do the research and see it, is a lot of those are really just layoffs that would have happened anyway, or layoffs that cover some really substantial business mistakes and that are then glossed with the sheen of AI. And this is an unfortunate reality about how AI is being used, particularly generative AI, in the climate that we're in. Is it's polishing up things. It's being used as a tool to diffuse reality, rather than what we should be using advanced technology for, which is to reinforce reality and look at it more closely, right? Science fundamentally is about looking at what is real and zooming into what is the observable world and going, how can we understand this better? How can we present a hypothesis against this, test the hypothesis, learn from that hypothesis, and build in response to what we know? Progress, scientific progress in particular, has been about becoming a better student and steward of reality. And part of the chaos of the Gen AI era is it is to some degree either fundamentally about or being used in ways to divorce us from reality. And that only harms people. It only harms ventures. It only harms society. It only harms cultures. If we use these tools to get further and further away from reality. And there's a video about this on our YouTube channel about the what's called 6-layer dip, the increasing layers of distortion between what is happening and what is being perceived. So that's a piece of what I'm carrying with that is again this sort of empathy for all of us who are facing these things, and then also just the issue of the reality distortion field. That really leads directly into what I want leaders to get out of this, which is if you could do anything in your work right now, you've got to become obsessed with reality. Your ability to be a good reader of reality, a good exegete of reality, a good, to be multilingual in all the ways that reality, in all the mediated forms that reality presents itself, that is I think the killer skill right now. People's ability to watch something, see something, and go, "Oh, that's why that is the way it is." We're starting next week in the guild, a cool little class. We'll repeat it if we find other people who want to do it, called M Dash, which is really a writing course. It's like a 5-week writing course, but the purpose of it is to some degree to improve your writing skills. But the other piece of it is to really help the participants see what's in front of them and be able to carefully and thoughtfully react to what's in front of them and see how what's in front of them is showing them something about themselves. One of the reasons why reading and writing is such a fundamental skill, I feel like I'm turning to nerd school here, but it really is important to me. One of the reasons why reading and writing is such a fundamental skill is because unlike any other form of media or art or whatever, when you're writing or reading, all that's there is the words. And you know exactly how they got there. Somebody's brain put some stuff in order and put letters in sequence on a page to communicate, right? So if I see a painting, there's a level of mystery there. Like, how did they do that? Or if I watch a movie, how did they do that, right? There's a distortion, and a willful and intentional, in this case, good distortion between me and the art, so that I can be a little bit in awe of how that happened. With reading and writing, all that's there is the words. And so anything that happens in my reaction to it is in some way about me. This is why it's so important to become a good reader and arguably a good writer if you want to be a great leader, is because by working exclusively with words, you learn how to use mirrors well. The words become a mirror. Part of the reason why I write as extensively as I do, because I always learn something about how I'm showing up and what I'm bringing to the world when I engage with the words. So again, with this reality distortion field overwhelming us, the 6-layer dip, as our little video said on YouTube last week or 2 weeks ago, is you got to fall in love with reality. And one of the best ways to do that is to become a good reader of what's happening in front of you. And then how is what's happening in front of you? What does that say about me? All right. And of course, what does this mean for trust? Kind of everything, right? That as our technological scape, our techscape evolves, and I'm going to separate this from the politics and the leadership dynamics and some of the societal impacts of the technological world, which are real and significant, and we alluded to those at the beginning of the podcast episode. But as our actual technology evolves, as the layers of the internet evolve, as the distortion involved in how digital comes to us, as digital becomes primarily a tool for surveillance and advertising technology, and we have to think differently about how we bring software to that party, every technological decision you make is going to impact your ability to earn trust. It just is. And if you're in software, every decision you make about how your technology is leveraged, what you sell it for, what you're solving for, how you build it, the level of transparency, the level of human touch, the philosophic underpinnings, right? SAAS is increasingly becoming a liberal arts project. It's what does this actually mean, this thing that I made? It used to be a comp sci project. It's really increasingly becoming a liberal arts project. And as software becomes a liberal arts project, we get to be better students of what the meaning is. Where is the meaning come from? How has the creators of this software imbued it with meaning? What does that mean for me and for my business and for how I leverage it with my clients or customers? Those are the real questions now. We've evolved past a 2003, 2006, 2007, ooh, a cool whiz bang thing. Look what wackadoo thing it can do. We've evolved past that. And now we get to see these things as elements of our actual mission, vision, and values, not as elements of chasing fads. And the more leaders and organizations can do that, the more healthy I think they're going to be. Thanks for all your time and attention. I know we have to earn it every week. And I look forward to seeing you in all the places, damsgiven.com, trustmadegrowth.com. If you want to work with me, the best place to start that search today is culturecraft.com, which is where we offer firms the unlock code to building TrustMade. We will see you next time.